Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of the Irish Angle. As usual, I've Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward here, and we're going to discuss all the things that happened in the last week in both Ireland and abroad when it comes to horse racing. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, Emma, you're at the sales, are you? See, you're doing it from the car. Are you buying or selling?
I'm not doing either myself now. I'm here. It's just kicking off there. It started at 10 o'clock, so just getting into the top lot so far is 675. John Stewart, Resolute Racing, is bought that, I think, and yeah, I'd say there'll be plenty more high price ones to come. It's the biggest sale, I suppose, in Ireland for yearlings. So all the big buyers seem to be here. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds throughout the day.
Great stuff. All right, well, we'll start off with some of the things from last week. The first one is the IHRB and the findings of a referral hearing into a horse called Nibiru, trained by Cathy O'Leary, who is the sister of Tony Martin, and she was training the horse at the time back in October last year, the 18th of October. It ran in Dundalk in a claiming race, which it won and was well backed, and it failed a doping test afterwards. Johnny, what do you make of this?
Yeah, as your blog points out, I find a lot of these cases in relation to prohibited substances. I suppose the headline has more maybe there might be a bit more bark than bite to the story sometimes. But in this instance, there are strong questions to ask here. One thing that really struck me about this was in the evidence. Now, Cathy O'Leary has been lauded by her brother for being such a solid ally in and Tony Martin has had some difficult times in recent years with suspensions and horses not necessarily running to form and so on and so forth. And Cathy's been a big help there, but I just find it absolutely extraordinary that according to her evidence, 2 days before the horse went on to land a gamble in a claimer at Dundalk, she sought medical advice to help Nibiru get through the race as he appeared to be off form. Now, I never train racehorses, but if a horse is off form and you're looking for medical advice for him to be in a position to land a gamble 2 days later, I just find that absolutely mad stuff. So, like, if a horse is off form and horses go in and out of form, is the solution to kind of look for medical advice? Then you look into the case, and the vet involved is Donnacha Houlihan. Donnacha Houlihan has come up a few times in various racing stories, and the Turbine one is the one that comes to my mind, which was another really notable case, I suppose. But he examined Nibiru. He found the horse be sore in his right hind and sore when flexing the fetlock. And he stated that what he administered intravenously advised the trainer that 48 hours was sufficient withdrawal time due to the low levels he administered. But it wasn't, it was 5 days basically, so it wasn't 48 hours. This is incredible. Like the reputational damage for instances like this, for me, or at least it should be quite bad for a trainer who basically is kind of advised, well, sure, listen, you'll get away with it because I've only put in a small bit and it's only 48 hours or whatever. When it turns out, basically, the published detection time for this drug is 5 days as of the European Horse Race Scientific Liaison Committee. Now, I've said this time again, the whole steroids in racing or any sort of drugs in racing or any sort of prohibited substance in racing, in this instance, it's a bit out of my pay grade to understand what's going on. And I've spoken to trainers who are firmly of the belief that there is no drug issue in racing, and that often horses are essentially treated for pain out of training and in training without a training, and sometimes tiny minute samples will show up, and it really isn't, it's nothing to worry about. And there might be an element of that. This case isn't that, though. This is a case of a horse who, again, if you weren't, I mean, as you say in your blog, Vinny, how could you back a horse who was off form 2 days before the race? And sometimes it's hard to know where gamble starts. This horse was off form 2 days before the race and then landed a gamble to win a claimer. But the other aspect of it that's kind of it's like a very Irish solution to an Irish problem is that Tony Martin himself was just coming out of his own suspension between the horse being entered in the race and winning the race. So there's a kind of a slight ambiguity there. And I've no doubt that Kathy was basically doing the best she could do in difficult circumstances, standing in for her brother. But there are a lot of questions from this that I'm not able to answer, but I do wonder, as I say, about some of the things that were said in the evidence, because I don't train horses, but I found some aspects of this really, really extraordinary. And again, if you laid the horse on the day, you laid a gamble that won that really shouldn't have won.
Yeah, well, the other thing here is we're constantly told, everyone will tell you, all the people who are telling you there's no drugs in racing and everything else, they'll tell you constantly these horses are in 5-star hotel accommodation, is what we're told. It seems to be more like nursing homes they're in, really, with the amount of medication they're getting. Like, besides this horse, that I don't know how, like 2 days beforehand, the trainer says the horse is off form. That's the very time she declared that horse to run in Dundalk. So why would you declare a horse that you think is not well, is the bottom line, in some way or other. But on top of that, the horse gets an injection 2 days beforehand. The previous case that Tony Martin was suspended for, which is the reason he wasn't training this horse on that day, is for a horse called First Man a year earlier. That horse got 3 injections the day before it won in Dundalk. I don't know. I find this extraordinary, because maybe it's the same if you were a football player and you're playing for Man United and there's an FA Cup final coming up or whatever it is, and you've got a knock on your leg. The physios are in and all the doctors are in. They're injecting your ankle to try and get you the pain relief or whatever to get you through the 90 minutes. That appears to be what it is. But at least with the Man United situation, it's your choice, isn't it? You're making that decision yourself, whereas the horse is not in this case. So I've struggled with it, to be honest with you. Like, your dad trains horses. You're in a yard there in Paddy Toomey's. Is that a constant thing that's happening? Are there vets coming in every day before races injecting horses?
From what I've seen, horses get the best of care, but like, it's kind of a strange one. Like Johnny said, it kind of brings more questions than answers. Like you said, it'd be unusual to declare a horse for a race when you thought they were off form, and especially when the yard has had similar situations in the past. You think they'd be more cautious. Even look at the veterinary advice seems to have been wrong that they were given, but it's well published, the withdrawal times for all the treatments that horses get. So look, it's hard to place the blame solely on one person, but it's an error on loads of different parts. But look, it's a very unusual situation, because if you had a horse who was out of form 2 days before a race, you wouldn't normally declare, and you definitely normally wouldn't try and land a gamble with it. So it's an unusual case, but like it's hard to have an awful lot of sympathy when I know advised by the vet that it would be okay 2 days later, but I don't think too many people would take that risk, given the withdrawal times published by the IHRB are fairly clear.
The other thing, Vinny, just on when the Donncha Houlihan thing in relation to Turbine, Donncha had rang Dr. Lynn Hillier. This is in relation to a nandrolone, and Donncha rang with a possible reason for the presence of nandrolone in the horse at that time. He explained that the gelding had been in his practice for wind surgery and may have been administered larabolin, a product containing nandrolone, by mistake. The vet outlined to the referrals panel how another horse at his practice was being treated with larabolin for 3 days at the same time as Turbine was there for his surgery. The horse was stabled next to Turbine. His relief was that Turbine had been administered the larabolin in error. And then you add, like in relation to Donncha, you add this in, and I think these are two absolutely extraordinary things to happen in relation to. Now, I'm not a vet, but this is a crucial aspect of is it 2 days or 5 days?
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing when you come back to this as well is that's my other question is, when you look at this case, there's no sanction against the vet who makes those decisions. He said 20 or 48 hours instead of 5 days. So they need to license these within the racing community, do they not? That you can only use a licensed vet who is the horse racing authority and understands all the rules, regulations, delay times for different drugs and everything else. It just seems extraordinary that the vet can literally walk away here and carry on practicing and could do the very same next week for a horse in another yard, and there's nothing to stop that happening. That seems to be the thing for me. Anyway, We'll move on. You're at the sales, Emma, and we're going to talk about a horse that cost a fortune at sales earlier on last year. Was it 4.3 million guineas sterling for Poker, owned by Ammo Racing? Only finished 6th of 9 on debut at Haydock last week. That's going to cost them a lot of money. Try and get that back, is it, Emma?
Yeah, okay. I always find I always find out you'd always keep an eye on those big, massive money purchases, and like a lot of the time they don't seem to work out, and it's hard to, like, I'd say a trainer getting a horse with that price tag, like the amount of pressure that must be on them is crazy, because everyone's still expecting it to be the next big superstar, I suppose, costing that much, but like it just doesn't always work out like that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's just the sales for the remainder of the autumn and winter. Like, will it be the same as last year? Because like the yearling sales last year, like at the top end of the market, it was just crazy. But like then again, like Kia had quite a good year really in racing terms, so it's hard to say that he'll put the brakes on too much just over that one loss. Like, it's the risk they take, I suppose, when they're bidding that kind of money. There's no guarantee. Like, the horse could go out and break a leg in the field the day after he buys him. Like, there's no guarantees to anything. If the horse cost a fraction of that at that price, you might say it was a nice debut. But I suppose when that money's down, the pressure's on, and there'll be plenty more of them to come out yet as well that could do the same.
Well, the other thing, I suppose, part of the reason he cost so much is because he was by Wootton Bassett, who was obviously one of the leading sires. And then we found out he died last week. Coolmore announced that he died eventually of pneumonia. That's a big loss to them, Johnny, and might mean Delacroix mightn't race again, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was. I think the first I heard of it was in our little WhatsApp group when one of you put it on, and I was actually very shocked by it, because I love pedigrees on the flat from somebody who follows racing in Ireland every week. I love to see the 2-year-olds coming up in March, and to see the new sires come along, and in relation to Coolmore investing in horses that are total outcrosses from Galileo, it's always been interesting. Like, they kind of took a gamble on Warfront to sire these beautiful looking horses, but ultimately kind of failed. And then they threw a lot of and I'm not exactly sure now, so I'm saying this in relation to, I suppose, the last few years, but they certainly really, really backed Wootton Bassett, who was another sire that kind of, he could have gone one way or the other. He was a very good 2-year-old in France, but Jesus, like this year, the results have been incredible. Like, to have an Irish Ledger winner the same day as having the third in the Flying Five, he's getting all sorts of horses, and by and large as well, they just seem very straightforward. Like, that's a massive thing. Like, one of the reasons for Galileo wasn't a superstar of a racehorse really, but when you look at his horses, who his progeny, they just have a real will to win. And Wootton Bassett horses, they seem to be generally quite free of quirks, from my experience of looking at them anyway. Various distances, various grounds, they seem to cope well. And obviously, we're going to have plenty more Wootton Bassets from Coolmore. This was bad news. Now, it already kind of gets you thinking what sons of Wootton Bassett now will kind of maybe step up into the place, and it's going to be fascinating. And I know, like, Aidan has some very nice horses at the moment, and a load of them are by Wootton Bassett. But in relation to Poker, like, it was funny watching the race the other day. I was like this horse was probably still have 11 to 4, 6 to 11 to 8, 6 to 4. It wasn't actually a particularly good maiden. Like, it wasn't one of these like red hot Newmarket maidens that was basically Group 3. It wasn't a great maiden at all. I was kind of looking at it beforehand. It's like, how is this horse not odds on? Like, you surely you couldn't get it that wrong. Like, if you're looking at somebody in terms of his pedigree and what he looks like, surely he's good enough to win a run of the mill maiden first time out. And like, he's shaped with a degree of promise. But like, what would that horse need to have done in that maiden to go up in value, or to hold his value? Would he have need to won by about 50 lengths or something? Because it's extraordinary money. Now, like, I was thinking of this as well, like, all the money that Coolmore spent, that John Magner spent on his legal fees, a lot of that does come back to the state. And as much as you're thinking he could have spent that money differently. And it's kind of like when horses are sold for this eye-watering amount, at least some of the money does trickle back into the racing economy. And there is a way of looking at it. Well, at least a very, very rich person has given money to somebody less rich. But geez, to spend that money on a horse who'd never run, for me is absolutely extraordinary. Like, it's extraordinary amount of money, which like he's now worth. He's worth closer to. Worth a lot closer to 1% of what he paid than 100.
All right, we'll move on to happier things. Listowel was on last week, all 7 days, huge crowds. Looking at some of the figures posted by Pat Healy on social media, 28,628 on Friday for Ladies' Day, which is massive. Nearly 27,000 on Wednesday for the Kerry National, and they even had 13,500 on Sunday. So a huge success as usual. The Listowel always is a great week. Probably doesn't need to be 7 days in truth, because some of the racing does drag on a bit. Did you get down there any day, Emma?
No, I didn't, unfortunately. Stad was hoping to have a runner on the Friday evening, a bumper, but she didn't get in the end, so my trip was off, unfortunately. But no, like there's the figures that Listowel get like year in, year out. Like you said, Patty, I think 92,000 across the 7 days. And like what it means to the economy in North Kerry as well, like the figures of that were very interesting as well. But like, in fairness to them, we kind of mentioned it last week, but like the work they do down there to get the crowds in and get everyone having a good time is brilliant. Like they had, even getting Oisin overriding it's the local community like that. I saw quotes from the bookmakers saying it was a disastrous week for them because it's kind of a local event, I suppose, and people like to back local trainers, local jockeys. So the Eoin McCarthy success, I'd say, cost the bookmakers a few quid. I think he only trains 9 miles down the road from Listowel, and to have 6 winners across the week for a relatively small operation. A young trainer on the up, I suppose, Eoin McCarthy, but like it was just brilliant to see, and kind of added to the festival. I suppose he beat Willie Mullins in the end to get that top trainer's title. But no, I was disappointed to miss it now. And look, I spoke to a few people who were down there. They had great weeks. Frankie Foster was down there doing the social media for a couple of days, and kind of it seemed like a nice variety of crowds. There was students, older racegoers, families. There's something for everyone down there, and like the racing was very good as well. Had a good renewal of the Kerry National. Danny Mullins coming out on top. Just good from start to finish. Like you said, the 7 days is a bit of a marathon, but plenty of people seem to enjoy it. Like I know plenty of people that go down for the full week and they go racing every single day, like, and don't seem to get sick of it. They go in year out. So it's obviously just a great spectacle, I suppose, for everyone who likes to go down there.
The extraordinary thing here, Johnny, is Eoin McCarthy. He took out a license in 2011, went 6 years without training a winner, and then he has 6 winners in the space of a week. I think he's had 11 winners so far this season, which is only 2 off his record, which was 13 a couple of years ago. He's going to smash that. Have you met him, Johnny? What sort of a guy is he?
I met Eoin many times, and in fact, one of our meetings, one of our things I'll always remember about him was that he was very honest to me one time in an interview, and it ended up landing in a bit of hot water, just a minor thing about not reporting a horse being off colour after a race or something, and I felt bad about it because as a journalist I probably should have said to him, like, if you haven't reported that, it might get you in trouble. And he was very sound about it, and I've met him many times since on preview nights. Very, very sharp judge on Cheltenham preview nights, actually, and he's a very good young trainer. The problem for Eoin, and like so many trainers, is that it's very, very difficult in the modern game, in the way National Hunt racing has gone. It's kind of rigged really against small trainers who have, point to points are run in such that horses are in the shop window. They're trained to be impressive in a point to point, finish first or second, be sold for big money to a big owner, or horses come from France. The days of the likes of Brave Inca, Hardy Eustace and Hartwell, though, the horses that kind of came through the old fashioned routes in National Hunt racing, that doesn't really happen that much anymore. So the likes of Eoin McCarthy has to deal with, low grade horses by and large, and it's really, really difficult. Like as much as in fairness, in Ireland, the racing calendar affords everyone an opportunity. It's still very competitive at that level. And then if you go to Listowel and start targeting Listowel as he does, like that's a proper week of racing. Like I know even the low grade stuff, like there were some of the handicaps last week were really, really competitive. And you can see like the likes of Eric Mack will try to lay out horses for Listowel. And it's for a trainer to definitely target a festival like that with a fairly limited brand of horse in general. Some nice horses, but limited. And to come out with the results that he did was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And Owen told me his training fees the last time I asked him, like very, very competitive. Like, and as somebody who's has been involved in ownership on and off for a long time, that does matter. Like, and I know training has become very, very difficult. It's hard to make money, but Owen does things as cost effective as he can for owners. And I really hope the likes of this week will promote to other owners, particularly around that region, because I think it's nice to have horses with a local trainer, and Owen very much is that. So he'll target the likes of Limerick at Christmas and say Listowel at the Harvest Festival. But to be winning that amount of races is phenomenal, and fair play to him. He's a great fella as well. Just to give a mention to Listowel and Ger Mulvale, who looks after their kind of social media and I suppose their general media. Like they got 2.6 million views in social media, and I was actually talking about this with Ger, and sometimes it's hard to really know what this means, but I know as somebody who's on social media far too often, particularly Instagram, I couldn't get Listowel was like in my ear. In every ear, in my every day, it was like flat out Listowel, and it was Ger, and if it were Frankie or someone else, it was just constant, and it was brilliant stuff. And actually talking to different people, like not the same people all the time, talking to different people around the racing game, people on the supposed periphery who actually often have a more interesting story to tell. It was brilliant stuff. I think a lot of race courses can kind of look at the example and analyse the stall in terms of the value of social media, because as much as I've a love-hate relationship with social media, it's a brilliant form of free advertising as well. And the stall have done that really, really well. And they were lucky with the weather, obviously, but it was a phenomenal week for them.
Yeah, great stuff. Another good news for you coming out from last week is a new Jack the Bromhead Equine Centre in Drumcondra, part of Child Vision's campus there. Jack, 3 years ago in a riding accident at Glen Bay Races, a pony racing accident when he was only 13 years of age. And his parents were there and all for the launch of this. And I think Chris Jones, one of the prominent owners, he was a big help in getting this set up. What about this, Emma? It's really nice thing to see a memorial for Jack that'll be there forever and doing good things for others.
Yeah, it's great to see Jack being remembered, I suppose, to have something like this. It's a brilliant thing, and it'll help lots of other kids as well. Yeah, look, it doesn't feel like 3 years ago that it happened. And you'd have to commend the family. They've been so strong since, and to get something like this up and running as well, it's brilliant and great to see him being remembered. They ran the race in memory of him at Leopardstown on Christmas a few years ago as well. It was nice, but to have this kind of permanent fixture it's brilliant. It was great to see the news during the week.
I thought it was, Vinny. I was reading the report. Like, this got kind of around the mainstream media, so to speak, and I noted at the time the Irish Times article, even though like racing, we forget this at times, racing is very, very peripheral in terms of people. The average man or woman on the street doesn't necessarily have any interest in racing most of the time. But when a few hours or maybe a day or two after I read the Irish Times article on it, it was one of the most read articles on the site. And I just want to give a lot of kudos to Chris Jones as well, who kind of proposed an idea to the Bromhead, to Henry and Heather. And apparently they were in tears when he proposed this, to raise funds to build a centre and name it after Jack. I'd implore anyone to read the piece in the Irish Times. I think the Bromhead family have carried themselves with incredible class over the whole situation since the passing of Jack, and they're really, really inspirational, like utterly inspirational. And I feel this piece as well, it really it speaks about the therapy of horses. And I know they've found out that horses have an incredible, and animals in general have an incredible ability to make people in difficult situations happier or more comfortable. And this was something that I think kind of can advertise that from the absolute tragedy of somebody's passing, he can really, really live on. And Jack is doing wonders for people even since he passed away through stuff like this. And it's a beautiful, beautiful read in the Irish Times. And I can't really praise Henry de Bromhead and Heather and the two girls enough for how they've carried themselves since this happened.
Yeah, very true. 100% behind you there. Another good news story is 56-year-old jockey Niall McCullagh. He was due to home watching the Curragh on the TV on Sunday, but instead he gets the leg up on the second reserve and goes and wins the £600,000 Cesarewitch. That was some going, Emma, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. His interview afterwards as well was really, really good. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's definitely worth watching it back. I suppose like he's the most senior member of the weigh room, 56 years of age, I think, and still riding as well as ever. It was interesting. Like you'd wonder when a jockey gets to that age, do they maybe sit back and take a back seat to it and just see what happens? But he's obviously still very, very hungry to to get success like that, because he was up early in the morning. He was saying checking where's there any chance he could get the ride on this reserve, and worked out well for him. I think he was saying in the interview it was 35 years ago he rode his first Cesaro Witch winner, and rode another one a couple of years later again, but for Dermot Weld, I think. But to come back and do it, and it obviously meant an awful lot for him. There was a great picture of himself and his son Scott in the parade ring afterwards as well. And Scott rode in the race in the JP colours as well. And Scott's actually down with Joseph a few days a week now as well, I think. So it was great. And I think he's doing a lot of jockey coaching now. He was saying afterwards, looked after about 40 young riders. And you can imagine how valuable he would be to a young rider coming through, especially the fact that he's still in the game and doesn't seem to be slowing down at any time soon. But it was brilliant. He gave the horse a feature ride. I was in the car yesterday as well. Good days racing. I was there for Saturday and Sunday. But no, it was brilliant. And yeah, anyone go back and watch that interview if you haven't seen it, because it was really good, and just see how much it meant to him. Even I think a tear came to his eye at one stage, but it was great watching.
Yeah, Niall's one of the good guys, I have to say. A lovely guy to deal with all the way through my career. When I've been dealing with him, we more or less started around the same time, I'd say. Anyway, moving on. BHA have another rule change. This is an interesting one for me anyway. The stewards can now deem a horse to be a non-runner if it is denied an opportunity to start on equal terms. This is basically to do with jump racing more so, or flag starts rather than stall starts, which they already, if you're not in the stalls, or don't come out of the stalls for whatever reason, your stall didn't open and such, the starter or the stewards can deem a horse a non-runner. But this is to do with horses that whip around or are left a significant distance behind. The problem I have here with this is, what is a significant distance? So let's take it there's a start. We put this one to Johnny. If we've a start of a flat race or a jump race, a start, and a horse is left 20 lengths, he's standing 20 lengths behind the others when the race starts. Okay, I can see that that's definitely a significant distance. He's a non-runner and everyone gets their money back. But what about if it's 18 lengths or 16 lengths or 14 lengths, 12 lengths? Where do you draw it down to? Because he could be 2 lengths behind the others. Is that enough to say? So I don't know where they're going to draw that line. I think there's a controversial incident with this at some point in the future, where punters will think they should have got their money back because their horse was so many lengths behind the others, and the stewards will deem it wasn't far enough. What do you make of it, Johnny?
Yeah, it's an intriguing one, I suppose. A bit like our debate on Poneros last weekend. You can kind of see both arguments in this, and I criticised the BHA quite a bit, and in fairness, I think the foundation for looking for this being introduced is a good. It's in a good place. Like, they're coming from a good place and trying to bring it in, but I actually do feel that it's just going to cause more difficulties than it might solve. A good example for me here was Lucas Tipple, who actually ran in the Lartigue, but 3 runs back, I was working in Mallow, and I couldn't believe, I think it was Derry Cullen was the starter. I couldn't believe that he let them go, looking at the side on when Lucas Tipple basically like turned violently kind of left at the start. And then I watched it back, and it was completely different if you watch the head on. And the starter, if it were Derek, he was absolutely justified in what happened. He let the tape go. And then Lucas Tipple, and it wasn't, if you look at the race in post-Compton run, for example, it's not even referenced in it, but he basically like jinked to the left and like lost masses of ground, like massive amount of ground, and ended up finishing a 5-length second when he was an odds-on favourite. Theoretically, he should have won the race because he lost way more than the 5 lengths that he was beaten or whatever. But then you have the instance of Maureen, who at Cheltenham, and I think Maureen would not apply here, because basically she'd be decreed to, it wasn't the fault of somebody else that she kind of whipped around the start. But connections would obviously argue with Maureen that the standing start was an issue. And you go to obviously you think of Nico de Boinville and his ride on the good. It's mad how Cheltenham was out of your head, but Who's the horse I'm thinking of?
Shishkin is.
Shishkin. So again, like the Shishkin example is interesting because I think Nico justifiably would say, well, sure, basically the tape was basically on his nose and he couldn't react well to that. But Chris Cook brought this up in the race bus, and this is a massive issue. Like, if you're betting and running in races like this, sure, how do you know? Like, if you have a 40-cent Rule 4 or something, and you're betting on a horse who may or may not be effectively declared a non-runner, that's another massive proverbial can of worms. And again, as much as I would laud the BHA, this doesn't happen very often. Like, most of the time, you have a load of non-triers who are not even trying to be up with the tape anyway. So basically, they're out the back. They don't really mind. The horses who are disadvantaged by stuff that happens at the start, it's fairly sporadic. And I would be with Chris on this. Like, when you have bad luck and you have a bet, you just move on. It's not the end of the world. I don't think this is going to solve. It's a bit like VAR. Like, VAR has, for me, created more problems than it's solved in football in the overall sense. I think this would be the same.
Yeah, the other thing you mentioned there is betting and running on horse racing. To me, that shouldn't be allowed at all. It's a bit of a scam, isn't it? Because if you're on track betting and running, you're looking at the horses. Anywhere else in the world, you're 3 to 5 seconds behind, so you're getting cleaned out. Is the bottom line.
Jeez, I love it, Vinny. I have to say, I get what you say, but love it.
Would you do it from home, Johnny? Would you?
Like, really, you shouldn't. Like, again, I suppose I'm not sure I've ever taken punting seriously enough to really do it properly. Like, and you'd see lads at the track with their, like, you know, at the racetrack getting their advantage, and you see the drones and all of that. But it's almost more of a point of reference as well. Like, you see in a jumps race, betting and running, by and large, like there's a bit of a delay, but it's not. If it's for me, horses go way too short early in races who make the running and stuff like that. Like, even say Carmen's in the Ledger was odds on at one stage. You're like, you know, really should he be, and stuff like that. I love that. I think it brings another level of interest to the betting side of it. For all that, at the same time, we've seen a colossal fall in liquidity in running. And to be honest, on the in running stuff, like I know you're saying it's unfair, but nobody has to do it. Like, if you're betting on the exchanges at home, you should know that there's a slight delay, and that's your own fault. And if you want a little bit of an interest, go ahead. So I do love it. I think it's an interesting aspect of betting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people are getting cleaned out. I think the ones who make money are the ones and everyone else is getting cleaned. That's what I actually think. Anyway, we'll move on. Cheltenham, they announced last week 30p off the price of the pint at the festival. About time, Em, is it? Will it affect you? You don't drink Guinness, do you?
No, look, I think that's kind of the big headline catcher. There was a few other changes thrown in there as well. I suppose, look, it's a good start for Cheltenham. You know, I think there was plenty of worries for them, I suppose, after figures from last year and lots of different voices on social media, normal media, other things. Just the price of Cheltenham seems to be the number one topic all around March, outside of the horse racing, but. Look, there was a few other things. They capped the maximum attendance figures, which I think is a great thing. Look, I know some people will say just pile them in, but I think it massively improves the race goers' experience. I think when, you know, places aren't massively overcrowded, you know, the facilities can hold up and manage a number comfortably rather than, you know, all just being jammed in there. I think it's going to be easier to bring a drink around the course and a few other things like that. Look, it's definitely a good start. It's something I suppose they needed to put a bit of control over. It was kind of something spiraling. You know, people talking about it and things like that. The 30p a pint. I suppose if you're there for a week, it'll add up, right? So people might be making a bit of a saving. Willie Mullins was quoted on about.
The more you save,
if you're there drinking Guinness for a week now for 30p a pint, you'd be able to have a few more bets, I suppose. But I think Willie was quoted saying that the accommodation is still the major thing, and look, that is true. I think for most people, if you're pricing a trip to Cheltenham, it's the accommodation, but that's not really down to the race course either, I suppose. It's something a little bit more out of their control. It's a smallish town, I suppose. Not really normally coping with crowds like they do for the festival, so it's kind of a harder thing to control, but it's definitely a step in the right direction from Cheltenham anyway.
Yeah, I'm just doing the figures here quickly as I'm talking to you. I think the racing blogger is going to save about 400 quid over the board. Anyway, we'll
move on the favourite on the county hurdle.
Hurdle, no, yeah. Anyway, last week. For one, it's pretty obvious, but my God, it looked a hell of a form. Wise approach in the middle park at Newmarket. The horse stumbled coming out of stalls, was in trouble at all stages for a short enough price to won anyway, I suppose, but in trouble all the way through, and then ended up like 3/4 of a length from Brussels, another one of those more Wootton Bassett. So hell of a performance from me from Wise Approach. I think we can look forward to that in the Guineas next year and wherever else. What about you, Emma? What caught your eye?
Well, I was actually in the car yesterday, like I was saying. I was there. Paddy Toomey had a couple of runners, and Black Caviar Gold, I thought she won the Weld Park Stakes. I thought she was very, very impressive. She's a filly. She started off in Galway. She had a nice debut run there. She actually reversed the form with the winner that day, Pivot Attack, in the Group 3 yesterday. But she kind of has progressed from run to run. Thought the softer ground would have suited her yesterday, and she was really, really impressive. I thought the way she quickened up was really smart. Even Billy was able to take a little bit of a pull and take his time on her. She showed a really good turn of foot. She's improving the whole time. She met Precise actually in a Cork Maiden a couple of starts back on ground that would have been faster than ideal for her, but that was a really good run. Looking back on it now behind a Moyglare winner, I just thought she was impressive, and she's definitely one to look forward to going into her 3-year-old campaign. She probably won't go out again this year, but she's got a Guineas entry next year, and she's kind of one of the ones that could have the owners dreaming for next year.
Fantastic. Black Caviar Gold. And of course, Billy Lee hit a milestone last week, 1,000 winners he's ridden, which is great to see. Right, Johnny, what did you pick out from last week for us?
It's actually nothing too flashy. I really like the performance of Hawk Mountain and the Beresford, though, and another Wootton Bassett out of Hydrangea. So a really, really, I suppose, noble pedigree. And I love the way he poured it on in the closing stages. I ended up tipping Shahan in the race. Often in these races, I've a tendency to look for value when the value might just be, I suppose at the top of the market. But Al Harith was interesting. He was backed in the race, even though he had plenty to find in relation to the others, and he shaped really well, and he was still beaten 3.5 lengths by Hawk Mountain. Like, to beat the rest of them by 3 lengths, 3.25 lengths or more, 5-4 favourite. He may have been sent off, but I love the way he finished the race. Just such a powerful performance, and as much as Aidan is going to miss Wootton Bassett, he's definitely going to have sons of Wootton Bassett who are going to go to stud, and I'm not exactly sure how that works out if they're out of Galileo bred mares in terms of their potential, because Galileo has such a pronounced effect on all of the bloodlines there. But Hawk Mountain's a lovely, lovely horse.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, well, look, thanks for all your contributions in sales, and don't spend too much. And we'll be back again next week for something similar. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.